We live in a time that is increasingly divisive. And I think there's no question that Americans have a lot of concerns, and there's a lot of disagreement on the best way to deal with those concerns, the best direction for the country, the best means of leading, etc. Henry Clay is a great example of how to lead through compromise, how to be a statesman, what being a statesman means, and the idea that we are stronger together than we are separately. The compromises that he made allowed this country to develop, held it together, allowed it to become such that when he died and no further compromise could be made, that it could survive the Civil War and emerge intact. All three of those compromises dealt with the disparate issues of the economies of the North and the South, and most especially slavery. So what he did basically was bring these regions together and get them to agree to perhaps give up certain things in order to preserve the Union intact. So in large part, as Abraham Lincoln said, could we be what we are or what we will be without Henry Clay? And I think the answer to that is no. Well, Henry Clay began acquiring property in 1804. He bought the first 125 acres in that year. He began in 1805 to develop it as a residence. Probably by, 1830, he had acquired the majority of the property. Today, the Ashland estate property comprises 16.7 acres. It is managed by the Henry Clay Memorial Foundation, an entity created by Henry Clay's great-granddaughter, Nanette McDowell Bullock, for the express purpose of maintaining this property and interpreting the mansion and preserving the legacy of Henry Clay. It is a house that is in many ways, I think, very livable. And you see a lot of houses of this era or large estate homes of this sort that can be overwhelming, and I don't think this one ever is. We have public spaces like the entrance hall, the drawing room where guests were welcome, the dining room where the family and guests ate. We also have very private spaces like Henry Clay's study where he worked. We try to cover all elements of that, both public and personal, to give you a well-rounded view of Henry Clay and his family. We have several outbuildings around it, a keeper's cottage, ice houses, a dairy cellar, a smokehouse, a privy. So you get a real sense of the kinds of buildings that supported a mansion of this sort in Henry Clay's time. He also managed and maintained a farm that was as fine as any in the country. He was a hemp grower, that was his major cash crop, and was one of the leaders in that industry, not only locally but nationally. We, this year in May, for the first time in 140 years, planted hemp at Ashland. People can come and see what this crop really looks like. Many people, I think, hear about it, but they haven't seen it because it's been gone for so very long. In the 1920s and 30s, there was a movement to basically stamp out marijuana use, etc., and the easiest way to do that was just to eliminate the legality of any of that family of plants. So cannabis entirely was banned. Now people are realizing that it has really important industrial uses and that Kentucky needs new components for its economy. Right now, of course, Kentucky is working to become a player in the hemp industry again, bring it back as a major cash crop for this state. And a lot of the questions that are being asked and raised are the same ones that Henry Clay dealt with. What is the best way to grow it? What is the best way to harvest it? What is the best way to process it? What sorts of hemp should one grow? Henry Clay dealt with all of those issues. So if we look back to what he was doing, we can both be inspired and informed in terms of what we might do now. Right now, the law allows for growing it in small amounts for experimental purposes under the auspices of the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. I think the hope would be that in another few years, as these experiments prove successful and it can be shown that there are a whole myriad of viable products and industries that can grow from this, that the way will be made forward, the way will be cleared to re-legalize hemp completely. We're really pleased to be a part of that conversation. I think it's a really important one, and it's really an evidence for how relevant and important history can be in dealing with the present and the future. We try to take the historical story and use it as a tool for people to understand the current situation, to make it relevant to what's going on today. I do what I do because I have a passion for artifacts and the notion that one can tell a story through an object. You can take an object which is seemingly innocuous, which is seemingly otherwise completely unimportant, and yet you can tell a remarkable and incredibly powerful story. That's an amazing thing, to hold that in your hands and know that story. That's what I love to do, and that's why I do what I do. Coming here is not just about thinking about the past. We take the past and use it as a tool to think about the present and the future. I think Henry Clay is an amazing individual, and we should be immensely proud as Kentuckians that he was here and did the things he did, and that so often he took pride in being able to do it as not only a Kentuckian but a Lexingtonian. And we hope that people will come and check it out. I think it's an amazing place and one of Kentucky's great historical treasures.